we have an inordinate amount of immigrants and refugees here um, coming in. And so I was given the privilege of meeting so many people and seeing better ways of understanding each other. One day we were handing out food. I didn't generally go to the food distributions, but every once in a while we'll do, just sort of keep on top of what's going on because I was helping run these programs. And we had this truck that we would lay out all the food, and every family would have a box with so much. And we would come weekly, and it was, we made sure everybody got plenty, but we had to make sure they got a certain amount so everybody had an opportunity to get food. And one man came and started knocking people out of the way, grabbing food out of other people's boxes, grabbing as much as he could. And of course, everyone was getting angry at him, but we pulled him to the side. He spoke Farsi, but we found out he had just gotten here. They had been in a refugee camp where there was never enough for them. And so it was, everybody's just got to do what they got to do to feed their family kind of thing. And I realized when we hear the stories that inform the behavior and the words with people, we can go so much further to connecting and building a bridge with them. And so things like that happened over and over again, where I started to hear the story beneath the behavior and beneath all that. I'm like, oh, because what I do when I teach about communicating, I liken it to the iceberg that we've all learned about. The top part above the surface of the water is actually a small representation of how big it is. And on top of the water is the words and actions we see people do. But if we look underneath, we see everything that informs that. Their culture, their experiences, all that informs that behavior. And if we can see that, we can have a better understanding of why they think the way they do and why they behave the way they do. And it gives us our first step then to better understanding and hearing their whole story.
I love that. I mean, I never get bored of that example. You know, it's a great metaphor for what we see in real life. Not so much it's surface level, right? And we teach this to leaders, right? That, you know, you need to get to know people at a human level before you can really make any assumptions about their kind of behavior. And we're all guilty of it. I was in my career when someone mildly annoyed me or become unproductive. Sometimes in my early career, I made, dare I say, mistakes. You know, I didn't give the right kind of feedback or support that a leader should give. But what I realized is it was more, for me, I was curious, what made people act the way they did? Why did one person, you know, do what they did and the other person's totally productive and happy? And then it keeps, you know, day to day it changes. Well, the simple reason is because we're all human beings, we're not algorithms. And what I learned was just to get curious. So, you know, what is it that this person needs, wants at the time? You know, what support can I give them? And crucially, what's going on in their world, both in a professional sense, but also just, you know, with the family, in the personal life. And all I did was just build, I guess, a safe space for them to be able to share, but crucially in their own time, because I learned that the hard way as well, that, you know, sometimes people are just not comfortable sharing because they're in a rock and a hard place. They're not really having a good time. And therefore they act with what they know in that space, right? And I guess with the work that you did even prior to doing these gatherings and teaching, you must have seen a lot, as you say,
Right.
where people are acting one way and society might put them in a box. But then just by showing a bit of compassion and love, you get to understand about their culture, their food, their family, what situation made them, you know, in that guy's context where he was just gathering for his family.
He was surviving.
Yeah.
Right. And I think when you take that time to build that relationship and open the door to conversation at their time, that shows them, especially if they're disagreeing with you, it shows them that they're seen and heard and that you cared enough to take the time to understand them. And you may walk away from the conversation still disagreeing on issues, but at least they felt seen and heard, and the anger drops and the understanding begins. And it's not always super easy at times because not everyone is self-aware of why they do what they do, and it takes time. But the first step is always allowing them to feel seen and heard. I would get phone calls at my work from angry clients and different things like that, and they would be so angry, and I would just listen and validate their feelings, validate their experience. They may have misunderstood something or whatever, but instead of arguing back or defending, just really listening, and being seen and heard. Sometimes that's all they wanted, is just to blow off steam and be heard, and then the conversation can be had, and the connection can be had. But until, fighting back, I mean, there's a time and a place. If someone is beating your child or something, there's a time to fight. But when you're just trying to have conversations, and make and build a bridge with someone, fighting back and throwing your opinions is going to get us nowhere. My speaking coach calls it belly bumping, where they're getting in each other's face, and that just doesn't get anything done.
Yeah.
So allowing someone to be seen and heard, and respecting their humanity, even if you totally disagree with where they're coming from, just opens all kinds of doors.
I love that you mentioned listening, because that's the solution to many problems, right? Because if someone has had a really tough time and they're in emergency mode, they probably haven't even stopped to have, that space. They probably don't feel listened to in the first place, right? So it's such an impactful thing to do. It's not a tool. It's just being a good human, showing your humanity to another fellow human being.
Right.
So, I mean, I love that you mentioned listening, because unless you stop and really listen with nothing in it, no judgments, no, I'm going to fix you, or as you said, I'm going to give you my opinion. I guess that's the leveler, right? Just listening with nothing on it opens up that door and that possibility to help that other person, and crucially just understand the window into what's been going on for them, right?
Right, right. And just some simple communication skills that we all can learn. Simply, when someone's telling you something, don't be in your mind thinking, okay, how am I going to respond to this? What am I going to do? Just truly hearing them and then responding with love. But yeah, that's something I have to do all the time, is constantly remember, don't be planning my next response. That's not going to move this conversation forward, because then you're not truly hearing and not reading their face and their emotion. Because sometimes they could be saying something very angry, but you speak to the emotion, like, you really sound scared, and I understand, I would be scared for my family too, or whatever, instead of speaking to the actual statement in it of, I don't like this group of people because they do this and this. So, well, that sounds like you're scared, and I would, for your safety, and I want my family to be safe too, and let's look at this, and they go into honor their feelings at the very least, if you can't honor and agree with their statement.